I returned to Stonewell Mansion after 10 long years, and the moment I stepped through those heavy black iron gates, the chill in the air felt exactly like my memories, cold, unwelcoming, and heavy with family secrets. Towering white stone columns, intricately carved domes, and a garden trimmed to perfection down to every leaf, it was a portrait of luxury, yet completely lifeless. My footsteps echoed on the stone path as the slow roll of carriage wheels in my mind reminded me of a past I thought I'd left behind. I wasn't here because I wanted to be. I was here because I had to be. News of my father's death, Edward Stonewell, one of the most powerful real estate tycoons on the East Coast, had pulled me back. Every major newspaper reported his passing, but not a single headline mentioned me, the illegitimate daughter he never acknowledged. The familiar scent of aged oak in the grand hall made my heart tighten. This was where I once hid behind a door as a child, hoping he would turn and smile at me. But he never did. Now he was gone, and I wasn't here for a smile, I was here for the reading of the will, a moment that could either change my life forever, or destroy it completely. I hadn't even reached the staircase when I heard my name, spoken in a voice cold as ice, not meant to welcome me. I turned and met the gaze of Victoria Stonewell, my father's official wife, once a fashion icon in 1980s New York, now still as sharp and commanding as ever. She stood tall in an elegant black dress, a string of white pearls around her neck like an unspoken reminder of her unshakable status. "Oh. You came too," she said, putting deliberate weight on the word too, as if to remind me exactly where I stood, on the outside. I didn't answer. I simply nodded. The air between us was so tight, it felt like a taut violin string ready to snap. The grand living room was crowded with power, business tycoons, high-profile lawyers, politicians. Even faces I recognized from the pages of Forbes. Every outfit was immaculate, but their eyes told another story: curiosity, calculation, and in some cases, outright disdain. I knew exactly what they were thinking. Why is she here? And does she dare step into the Stonewell family's domain? The funeral unfolded to the somber tones of a church organ. My father's casket lay in the center of the room, surrounded by pristine white floral arrangements. I stood at the very back, careful not to draw attention, though I could still feel the weight of every stare piercing my back. When the pastor spoke his farewell, my eyes drifted up to the large portrait of my father, dressed in a navy suit, that half-smile on his lips, his deep gaze. For a fleeting moment, I imagined he was looking directly at me, wanting to say something he had never said in life, but the moment shattered when I noticed someone unexpected. Sitting in the front row beside Victoria was a woman I didn't recognize, holding hands with her like they were close allies. And next to her, a boy of about 12, with eyes so hauntingly familiar that my breath caught in my throat. After the funeral, the guests slowly dispersed, leaving only family members and a few trusted insiders. I was about to slip away quietly when Victoria Stonewell suddenly called out, "Don't you want to say hello to your younger brother?" The entire room fell silent. I turned and saw the boy standing close beside Victoria, his gray-blue eyes piercing straight through me. The mysterious woman, whom I now learned was named Elaine, stepped forward and placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. "This is Christopher. Richard's son. And also my son." Each word she spoke cut like a cold blade. My mind buzzed, scrambling to piece together the implications. My father had a child with this woman? And Victoria allowed them to stand beside her as if nothing was wrong? I forced myself to stay composed. "Well, it's quite a surprise to meet my brother." Elaine smiled faintly, but her eyes held no warmth. Richard always cared for his children. He just had his own way of showing it. There was something loaded in her tone, and I knew for certain it wasn't meant for the boy. Victoria crossed her arms, slowly watching my reaction like a director enjoying her own family drama unfold. Before I could ask anything more, the Stonewell family's private lawyer, Mr. Matthews, stepped into the room and addressed us all. As per Mr. Richards' will, every family member must be present tomorrow morning for the reading of the will. A wave of tension instantly swept through the room. I caught the slight curl of Victoria's lips, and in Elaine's eyes, a flicker of calculation. I left the Stonewell estate with a heavy sense that I had just stepped into a maze of power and deceit, where every smile might be hiding a knife. The next morning, the New York sky was overcast, heavy gray clouds looming like they were warning of an approaching storm. I stepped into the grand living room of the Harrington mansion, a place where my father once hosted lavish parties, but today, it was eerily silent. Victoria Harrington sat at the head of the table, posture straight, her gaze icy. To her right were Elaine and Christopher Harrington, the boy still wearing a mix of curiosity and confusion. To her left sat my older siblings, Charles and Miranda Harrington, each with a different expression, but both radiating the same thing, tension. Mr. Matthews, the family's private attorney, placed a thick folder on the table and spoke calmly. According to the will of Mr. Richard Harrington, I will now read the full contents of the will in front of all family members. He opened the first page and began in a steady voice. I, Richard Harrington, being of sound mind, hereby leave all commercial real estate holdings and executive control of Harrington and Company to my eldest daughter, Victoria Harrington. Victoria gave a slight nod, a victorious smirk curling her lips. I caught Charles clenching his fists, while Miranda exhaled sharply, struggling to keep her composure. Mr. Matthews continued. The trust fund valued at $50 million will be divided equally between Miranda Harrington and Christopher Harrington. The entire room seemed to freeze. Miranda whipped her head toward Christopher, then to Elaine, her eyes brimming with suspicion and anger. Elaine calmly brushed her son's hair, as if this had always been expected. Finally, Mr. Matthews read the words that made my blood run cold. The entire Harrington estate, along with the private art collection, shall go to Ethan Harrington. I was stunned. I never imagined my father would leave me the most symbolic asset of the family, the one Victoria had always considered her untouchable pride. Her expression immediately darkened, while Elaine's lips curved into an unreadable smile. As Mr. Matthews closed the folder, the air in the room grew dense. Victoria rose, her voice like ice. Father has left us more than just wealth. He's left us a war. I knew, from that very moment, every move I made would be under their scrutiny. And the battle for the Harrington family's power had officially begun. 3 days after the will reading, the Harrington mansion was silent, no laughter, no polite chatter. Footsteps along the marble halls echoed with a cold, cautious rhythm. I knew it well, everyone had already begun their calculations in this dangerous power struggle. That evening, while reviewing some of my father's old papers in the library, I overheard hushed voices outside the door. My sister Miranda's voice was low and urgent. Victoria, if Ethan keeps the mansion, you'll lose your influence on the board. I can help you. In exchange, you'll make sure my shares increase. Victoria replied in a quiet yet commanding tone. You know I won't let anyone outside of direct blood control this property. Leave the paperwork to me. You just need to stand on my side. I froze. Heat surged through my veins. They had already formed an alliance, while I, the one my father trusted with the family's most symbolic legacy, had now become their target. The next day, Elaine unexpectedly invited me to a small cafe in Brooklyn. Unlike her usual icy demeanor, today she appeared almost warm. Ethan, you know. Your father once told me you were the only one who truly understood his vision. But Victoria won't sit quietly. If we work together, I have a way to make her step down. I stayed silent, studying her face, trying to decide whether this was genuine or a trap. But deep down, I knew, to survive in this family inheritance war, I couldn't stand alone. That night, I sat alone in my father's study, staring at the photograph he kept beside his desk. Those eyes seemed to remind me that every decision I made from now on would shape the future of the Harrington name. And I knew. Time to choose my side was running out. The first board meeting after the funeral took place in the Harrington Corporation's council chamber, a vast room lined with dark walnut panels, a long oval table, and portraits of past chairmen watching over us in solemn silence. I sat in my father's former seat, the weight pressing down on me as if I carried not just his legacy, but also the simmering family vendettas that came with it. Victoria entered, her emerald green dress clinging elegantly, projecting power, though her eyes were as cold as steel. Behind her came Miranda, lips curved into a smile that revealed nothing. Elaine sat across from me, arms folded, as if already bracing for battle. The meeting began with numbers, profits, dividends, investment returns. But we all knew no one cared about the financial report today. What everyone was waiting for was the moment the balance of power would be decided. Victoria spoke first. "Ethan, I respect that father left you the family symbol. But that doesn't mean you can make every decision on your own. This corporation cannot be left in the hands of someone without experience." My heart pounded, but I kept my voice steady. Father trusted me enough to give me this responsibility. I have no intention of changing our course, but I will not allow anyone to turn it into their personal playground. Miranda cut in, her voice sweet yet laced with venom. "We all want what's best for the company. But sometimes, to grow, you have to remove the obstacles." The air grew heavy. A few board members exchanged glances. Clearly, Victoria's faction had done their lobbying in advance. But then, unexpectedly, Elaine spoke. "If we're going to talk about capability, we should remember who brought in the biggest deal last year. Ethan." The room fell silent. I caught Victoria's gaze, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. I knew then that this corporate power struggle was only beginning. But today, one thing became painfully clear: in this room, no one was wearing a mask anymore. Right after the tense meeting, I returned to my father's office, a place still heavy with the scent of oak wood and the faint, lingering smoke of his signature cigars. As I slid open his desk drawer, I found an old envelope, its edges frayed, with just 2 handwritten words on the front: "To the successor." My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a letter. And a second will, completely different from the one the lawyer had read at the funeral. In the letter, my father wrote, "If you are reading this, it means you've stepped into a battle not just for money, but for the truth. In 1989, there was a secret agreement between our family and the Beaumonts. They saved the company from bankruptcy, but the price was a secret I have kept all my life." The letter stopped abruptly, torn right at the most crucial part, the bottom stained with water, as if someone had tried to erase it. But it was the second will that left me frozen. It divided the assets and shares in a way that would turn the Harrington inheritance battle upside down. In it, 20% of the company's stock was left to Lucas Beaumont, a name never once mentioned in our family. I immediately called my private attorney. His brow furrowed as he studied the papers. "Ethan, if this will is real, it changes everything about who controls the Harrington Corporation. But who is Lucas Beaumont? And why did your father hide him from everyone?" That night, I didn't sleep. The question gnawed at me: was Lucas a business partner? An enemy? Or a family member I never knew existed? One thing was certain: if Victoria or Miranda discovered this hidden will before I could uncover the truth, they would weaponize it against me. The next morning, as I stepped out of my office, Elaine suddenly stopped me, leaning in to whisper, "Ethan, don't believe everything your father told you. There are things he hid because if you ever learned them, you wouldn't be the same person anymore." I began my investigation by digging through corporate records, old business deals, and any trace of the name Lucas Beaumont. But everything was a blur, almost as if someone had deliberately erased him from every official document. In a dusty archive file from 1989, I found a yellowed photograph, my father shaking hands with a tall man, jet black hair, and a half-smile brimming with confidence. In the corner of the photo, a small handwritten label read, Lucas B. I snapped a picture of it, my chest burning. There was something about his eyes that sent a chill down my spine, not the look of a business partner, but the look of a man who owned a secret. I tracked down a retired investigative journalist from the Wall Street Herald, a woman who once wrote an exposé series on the corporate elite of that era. Sitting across from me in a small cafe, she sipped her espresso and said quietly, Lucas Beaumont. I thought that name had been buried forever. Ethan, are you sure you want to know? Because once you do, there's no going back. I nodded. She slid a small envelope across the table. Inside was a copy of an unpublished article. Its contents revealed that Lucas Beaumont had once been a financial advisor and the secret lover of my mother, before she married my father. Rumor at the time suggested he vanished after a power struggle, and that he might be the biological father of someone in the Harrington family. When I returned home, I found Miranda in the living room. She stared at me with an unsettling, knowing smirk. Little brother. Or should I say, cousin? I froze. Miranda knew something. And if she already knew, that meant this family secret was about to explode. That night, a single anonymous text arrived on my phone. Just one chilling sentence. If you want the truth about Lucas, meet me at Westwood Cemetery, grave number 89, at midnight tomorrow. Midnight the next night, a light rain fell. I pulled my dark trench coat tighter and stepped into Westwood Cemetery. The air was thick with the smell of damp earth and wilted lilies. Rows of headstones lined up like silent witnesses, watching every step I took. Grave number 89 lay in a remote corner beneath the gnarled branches of an old oak. The gray stone read, Lucas Beaumont, 1955 to 1991. The date of death made me stop cold. If Lucas had died in 1991, then why had his name, messages, and shadow still been haunting the Harrington family? I crouched down for a closer look. That's when I heard it, a faint sound behind me. I turned. A woman in a black cloak stood in the darkness, her face hidden beneath the hood. Her voice was low, rough, trembling. You shouldn't be here, Ethan. This truth will destroy everything. I took a step toward her, but she backed away. In the dim light, one detail made my heart slam against my ribs, the ring on her right hand. It was my father's ring. A one-of-a-kind piece, custom-made, the same one I'd seen him wear at every public appearance. I pressed her. Who are you? Why do you have that ring? Is Lucas Beaumont still alive? She was silent for a long moment, then pulled a sealed envelope from inside her cloak and placed it gently on the headstone. Read this when you're alone. And remember, trust no one. Not even your family. She turned and vanished into the rain, leaving me shivering, not just from the cold, but from the sense that I had touched the darkest part of my family's hidden past. Ignoring her warning, I tore the envelope open right there. Inside was a single sheet of aged paper, the handwriting slanted and deliberate. Ethan, if you are reading this, then the truth is. Before I could finish, a strong hand clamped down on my shoulder from behind. The hand on my shoulder tightened, yanking me around. Under the dim glow of the street lamp, I saw a face so familiar it knocked the breath from my lungs. David, my half-brother, the one I thought was still on a business trip in Chicago. His eyes were bloodshot, breath ragged. You shouldn't read that here, Ethan. Give it to me. I gripped the paper tighter and took a step back. Why? Afraid I'll find out something? David's mouth twisted, half anger, half pain. You don't understand. If you knew everything, you'd regret being born into this family. The rain hammered harder against the oak leaves. I unfolded the paper, reading quickly before David could snatch it away. Lucas Beaumont is not dead. He is your biological father. And the accident in 1991 was staged. The person behind it is the one you trust most. My hands shook as my eyes locked on the final line. That person is David. My chest constricted. I looked up to find David staring back, not with the eyes of a man just exposed, but with the desperate gaze of someone trying to keep me from falling into a pit I couldn't climb out of. Ethan. You have to believe me. Things aren't what you think. Lucas. He's more dangerous than anyone in the house. Before I could respond, a loud noise echoed from the far end of Westwood Cemetery. Blinding headlights cut through the rain. A black SUV roared toward us, tires screeching on the slick gravel. David shouted. Run. I barely had time to move before the gunshot cracked through the night. The bullet slammed into Lucas Beaumont's headstone, sending shards of stone flying. In the chaos, the paper was ripped from my grip, swirling away into the darkness. David and I bolted in opposite directions. Footsteps pounded behind me, mingling with the rain, the gunfire, and the frantic thud of my own heart. From that moment, I knew, I was no longer just chasing the dark family secret. I had become the target. I burst out of Westwood Cemetery, sprinting across the empty street, rain lashing my face like icy whips. My heart pounded, lungs burning, but I didn't dare look back. One thought hammered in my mind: if they caught me, I'd vanish like my father. And no one would ever know why. I cut down a narrow alley, slipping on the slick pavement. My foot skidded, almost sending me sprawling, when I spotted a rusted metal door cracked open to my left. Without thinking, I darted inside and pulled it shut behind me. The stench of mildew and motor oil hit me instantly. My weak phone light swept across peeling paint, rusted tools, and shadows that felt too deep. I'd stumbled into an abandoned auto shop. Outside, the footsteps slowed. Then stopped. The only sound was the relentless drumming of rain on the corrugated roof. I held my breath, ears straining. That's when I saw it, on a dust-caked wooden workbench, a thick envelope. The handwriting across the front made my stomach clench, shaky, but familiar. Ethan, don't trust anyone. Not even your mother. My hands trembled as I tore it open. Inside were faded photographs, Lucas Beaumont beside an unfamiliar woman, his hand resting on her stomach, both smiling as if nothing in the world could touch them. A birth certificate slipped out. My heart stopped when I read the name under Mother, Margaret Beaumont, my mother. But the real blow came from the father line, Lucas Beaumont. And the child's birth date. Months before my mother married the man I'd always believed was my real father. I stared at the paper, feeling the ground give way beneath me. David's voice echoed in my head. Lucas is more dangerous than anyone. My phone buzzed in my pocket. An anonymous text lit the screen. Want the truth about Lucas and the will? Tomorrow. 9 a.m. Pier 4. Come alone. Outside, an engine growled to life. Headlights swept across the shop's rusted walls through the narrow gap in the door. I killed the light on my phone, retreating deeper into the darkness. Tonight would be the longest night of my life. The next morning, thick fog blanketed Pier number 4, the damp air seeping into every breath. I stood there, the envelope from last night still in my coat pocket, feeling as though every step toward the truth was a step closer to the abyss. Footsteps echoed behind me. I turned. Sarah. Not a stranger, not a pursuer. She wore a long coat, her eyes heavy with something unspoken. Ethan, I'm sorry for keeping this from you. But now. You have to know everything, she said, her voice trembling. She handed me another file, a copy of Lucas Beaumont's hidden will. It stated that all of his assets would not go to his legal heirs, but to the only child I acknowledge by blood, the very child from the birth certificate I had found the night before. Sarah's hands shook as she continued. That child is you. I froze. She explained how Lucas and Margaret had once been in love, but due to family pressure, she had married another man. Everyone believed I was the son of my legal father, but the truth was, I carried the blood of Lucas Beaumont. And David had known this all along. Suddenly, a deep male voice came from behind Sarah. And now, you'll hand it all over to me. David emerged from the fog, a gun in his hand. Before I could react, police sirens pierced the mist, red and blue lights slicing through the fog. David turned to run but slipped near the edge of the pier, the gun splashing into the dark water. Sarah and I stood there in silence, listening to the waves crash against the dock, as if closing the final, bloody chapter of the Beaumont family secret. I knew I had escaped the spiral of power and betrayal. But I had also lost what it truly meant to have a family. Maybe the truth isn't always what we want to hear, but it's something we all must face. If you've stayed with me until the very end, I truly appreciate it. Stories like this will continue here on A True Moments Life, where we'll experience the full spectrum of human emotion, joy, rage, love, hate, and the hard lessons hidden in between. Subscribe, share your thoughts about my choice today. Because the next story might just hold the answer you're looking for.